So this is my second ShakeTube video. Last week I didn't really do a proper video. I ended up filming on Sunday and tossing just a couple of thoughts in with kind of a recent reads video. But this is a proper ShakeTube video, and this week's play is Richard III. I've got my great little edition here with a few sticky notes for passages that I really like. There's something interesting about my edition, though, that I'm going to show you. So there are 3 plays in this edition, and it belonged to my grandfather. I have the whole set like this. It's the complete works in the set. I believe it's around 100 years old. I'm not sure exactly. All my Googling came to nothing, but it was published by A. Albert Publisher, 5258 Duane Street, New York. So this particular book has Comedy of Errors, King Richard III, and Coriolanus in it. Richard III is in the middle of the book, but the pages got a little bit mixed up because here I have the cover page for the final play. Coming before King Richard III's introduction. It's just a short introduction, less than 2 pages. And then before the final play, back here, before that introduction, we have the cover page for Richard III. So that's a little bit mixed up. But this was the first time I had read Richard III. I had read Richard II and really enjoyed that. But I think this one has become one of my favorites. It's right up there with Macbeth and Hamlet. King Richard III begins with the now famous line, "Now is the winter of our discontent." And I wasn't sure which play that came from until now. I knew it was Shakespeare. But I didn't know where it came from. And that line kind of illustrates how great the rest of this play is. We have that famous line to start, and the writing in this play is just fantastic. So the play begins with a monologue by Richard, by the Duke of Gloucester, at the time Gloucester. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. Let's just call him Richard. It begins with Richard kind of strolling in and explaining that it's peacetime, and because it's peacetime and because he doesn't consider himself very attractive, because he's not suited to be a lover, he's bored. He has no purpose in his life, and so he decides that to give himself purpose, he will be a villain, and he outright says that he'll be a villain. So there's no doubt in his mind, no doubt in our minds, that he is indeed the villain of the play who will be taken down at the end. And as a villain, he is going to eliminate the heirs to the throne and take the throne for himself. And after murdering Anne's husband, he will marry Anne and make her his queen. He later changes his mind about Anne as his queen, of course, and pursues another woman, actually his niece, which is a bit bizarre, but we'll just let that slide. Yeah, so that's the premise of the play. But he's really a dynamic villain in the sense that there are people in his life who can't believe that he's a villain. He is all ready to execute a family member of his, someone who's very close. The Duke of Clarence, and even as he sends the murderers to murder the Duke, who is locked up in the tower by the current king, Clarence can't believe that it's really Richard who is having him murdered, because he believes that Richard loves him dearly, and he actually appeals to the murderers to go to Richard to ask his assistance in preventing his murder. And of course the murderers say to Clarence, "Oh no, you've got it all wrong. It's not the king that's having you killed. It's your dear, dear Richard, who you love and who you believe loves you." And then, of course, gradually as more people start to die, as Richard's terror spreads. His family members realize that it is indeed Richard who is causing all this tyranny, causing these murders. So this play has everything that I love about Shakespeare. It has deception, it has murder, it has a plot to murder a king, it has ghosts. The ghosts actually play an important role near the end, and since this is one of the lesser read Shakespeare plays, I don't want to give away the ending too much. Bit of a spoiler, but the ghosts are important at the end, as they are when they appear in other Shakespeare plays like Hamlet. And then of course we have the final battle, which brings down Richard, and we have our hero, Richmond. One of the things I love about this play is the banter in one particular scene between Elizabeth and Richard. Richard shows up to speak to Elizabeth, and he wants to ask her to see what her daughter's thoughts, what his niece's thoughts are on him marrying her. And Elizabeth, rather wittily, calls him out for the murder of her sons. I equally enjoyed the confrontation between Richard and Anne earlier on in the play. Anne is burying her first husband who has been murdered, and Richard approaches her, suggests that she marry him. She calls him out for the murder of her husband, but in the end she ends up marrying him anyway because he somehow wins her heart in this kind of odd exchange. So this is the kind of play that makes you stop and say, wow, what a great line. That's my sticky notes from earlier. So we have King Richard marching along, and then his group is intercepted by the Duchess, by his mother. And King Richard says, "Who intercepts my expedition?" And she replies, "She that might have intercepted thee by strangling thee in her accursed womb from all the slaughters, wretch that thou hast done." So that's a great line, but then later on down the page we get the Duchess also saying, "Thou camest on earth to make the earth my hell." I love this bit of dialogue, this exchange between Richard and his mother as well. And then, even better, a couple pages later, we have Queen Elizabeth, who, as I said, confronts Richard about the murder of her sons when he suggests that he is going to marry her daughter. And she says, "No doubt the murderous knife was dull and blunt till it was whetted on thy stone-hard heart to revel in the entrails of my lambs." What damning words from the mother of the murdered cousins. But that's the kind of thing where I'm reading, I'm like, that is great writing right there. Which is why I love Shakespeare. Unlike Taming of the Shrew, Richard III illustrates, I think, the best of Shakespeare's writing. So that is ShakeTube Week 2 and my thoughts on Richard III, and I will be back next Friday with my thoughts on another Shakespeare play.